Welcome to Headlines. This is David Lichtenstein here in the Yeshiva Shel Maila, the virtual Yeshiva. That name, Yeshiva Shel Maila, I had the honor of the last two of the Shabbosim of his life. Rabbi Moshe Shapiro here when he was in America stayed by me. And he said you should call it the Yeshiva Shel Maila. So I'm adopting that moniker. So this week we have a very interesting program. We're going to be speaking about Nachal Chareidi. Now, we have so many interviews, we're actually going to do it over 2 weeks. And we're going to hear from a Rabbi Lefkowitz, who's like the head of the Askanim. He's also a Satmara and a Briska. And he's going to produce a letter, which I hadn't been aware of, where Rav Steinman writes in the letter to Rabbi Danziger that the Nachal Chareidi is only for Chayvei Krisis, where it's boys who are totally OTD, the Machal Shabbos, or eating treif, etc. But otherwise, he didn't support it. And we're going to have a lot of other guests who say otherwise. This week, we're going to have Yochanan Danziger, who's a Rav in the Nachal Chareidi. Next week, we will have the founder and president of the Nachal Chareidi, Tzvi Klebenov, who will testify about many Bachrim who he sent, who were not off the Derech. Last week, we had David Hager, who says that Rosh Steinman used to send Bachrim who were not off the Derech. And then we will have the person who is most Makur of Torah, one of the great Makuravim, the Rashiv of Yad Aaron, Rav Eichenstein, who will also talk about what Rav Steinman's attitude was. So it should be very interesting, this debate. Now, it seems we have a steer. We're going to have witnesses who say Rav Steinman sent boys who are not. And we're going to have those who say, we're going to put on our website a letter that was produced. It was written around 17 years ago, in which he says it's only for Chayvei Krisis. And so there's a stira here. And I'm sure my Olam will have many terutzim, but let me suggest certainly one possibility. And that possibility was by somebody, or Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Chaim, who works at Nachal Chareidi, who said that when Rav Steinman came out pro-Nachal Chareidi, he said they put up pashkevilim about him all over Yerushalayim and Bnei Brak, calling him really terrible things. In fact, I saw now, if you Google, you'll see that by his ptira, they said that in various communities, etc., of the Baryanim, the real right wings. Rashi says Baryanim is Anoshim Reikim Peichazim L'Molchama. They said they were making l'chaims about his ptira, so clearly he was seen as a supporter of Nachal Chareidi. And he said he was intimidated, and he wrote it's only for Chayvei Krisis, because there was a big hafgana in Yerushalayim against him. I don't know if that's true. This is what the fellow from Nachal Chareidi says. But really, in actuality, was for he sent many other Bachram, and he said he did it out of intimidation. That's one possibility. I don't know. If you have another teretz, please let me know, because we have a letter, and we're going to have witnesses the other way around. So I'm not sure if Chsimas Yodai has a din of Trey or Trey Negadedim. We have a lot of lumdim here. You'll decide that. Now, before we start, I would like to say a vart on the Parsha, and this is a vart. To me, it's a very powerful vart. It's a life's vart. In this week's Parsha, what happens? Yehuda encounters Yosef, and he tells him the whole story, what happened to his brother, etc. And Yosef is listening and listening, and what happens at the end? He says, Ata yeshiv no avdecha tasar, take me instead of him. And it says Yosef couldn't help himself anymore. And what does it say? Vayomer Yosef al Echav, geshunu elai, come to me. I want to tell you something. He says, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef. Asher machartem oisi Mitzrayim. You sold me to Mitzrayim, right? And then he says it again. Al yichar beinechem ki machartem oisi. Don't be upset that you sold me. And when they sold him, it says, what did Yehuda say? L'chu v'nimkerenu la'yishmaelim. So how does he explain it? He says, don't be upset for selling me. Why? Because God sent me. Right? Vayishlacheni Elokim lefnechem. A second time, a third time. Va'atem loyatem shalachtem aisiein heina ki Elokim. Interesting. He changes it from mechira to shlichus. So I saw one of his Sfarim writes a beautiful Torah. He says like this. He says, all of us often feel sold, right? we're sold. If I would have had a better opportunity, maybe I would have been in yeshiva. We could have been Rosh Yeshivas. Maybe your job is too hard. Maybe your father could have sent you to a better school. Maybe he could have given you money. Maybe the husband isn't the exact husband you wanted. Maybe the wife isn't the wife, right? Your job, your child. We were all sold down the river by somebody. A mother who didn't appreciate us, a father who was too rough, a teacher who said the wrong thing. Nobody respected me. Right? Me. I'm like Rodney Dangerfield. Nobody respected me. I was sold down the river. If I had had a different opportunity, do you know what I would be today? Let's face it, we were sold. I know you were sold. You think you were sold, right? So what does Yosef say? You think you sold me? You didn't sell me. I'm a messenger. I'm a shliach. Lemichya shlachani elokim lefnechem. Vayishlacheni elokim. Loi atem shalachtem oisi. Right? Kiyam elokim. What's he saying? I wasn't sold. It's my mission. I was speaking to a parent a few weeks ago, and he was telling me he works so hard, and on top of that, he has to take his son now all over for yeshivas. He has to make a trip to Israel. He's going to take him to visit 6 yeshivas. My mission upcommenished. And I looked at the father and I said, wow, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to be like a father. What is a father's dream? To take his kids, to show them different yeshivas, different schools. That's what a dream. Like, that's what better way to nurture, to be a father, to show your child, show him the ropes, teach him, show him how to negotiate, how to deal, how to talk to mechanchim, menalim, bedrooms, dorm. This is, wow, what a great opportunity. The guy looked at me and he said, it really is a great opportunity to be a father. What a fulfillment to be a father. You could have one mother diapering the baby in the middle of the night, or staying up with a crying child, or doing homework and saying, what a headache I have, I worked so hard now. And another one says, I dreamed my whole life of this mission to be a mother. I remember when I was in yeshiva once, many years ago, so once one of the children of Reb Nachum, Mira Shiva, was being, as children are, and Reb Nachum was obviously aggravated. So somebody told him, Tsar Gidol Banim. So Reb Nachum looked at him and he said, that's not Tsar Gidol Banim, that's Gidol Banim. You should never know from Tsar Gidol Banim. So what is Yosef telling them? He says, I wasn't sold. And Halacha, Yosef is right. Shulchan Aruch, I think it's in Reish Hey, Chashabishbit says, we paskin pluvik zavin, lavs vides vide, if there's no proper exchange. You can't force somebody. Every sale needs the acquiescence of both sides. Both sides have to countenance the sales. You need das kaina and you need das makna. If it's done forcefully, it's not, even though there's a Rambam in Kedushin, he argues on the Baal Itter. It's an outlier of a Shita. The Ramah does bring it, I believe. But we hold halacha chayshemish, but you cannot force a sale. You cannot force somebody to buy. You cannot force the sale. He says, you can't sell me against my will. You know what my will was? My will was to be a shliach. My will was to do this willingly, to come out here, lahachyais, to feed the entire world. This was my... And you know something interesting? Just like Mechira needs das, Shlichus needs acquiescence. What's the halacha? The Gemara says in Kiddushin, beginning of Perek Beis, the Gemara says, Ma atem l'daitchem, af shluchachem l'daitchem. Shlichus means I have agreed to be a shliach. I have not agreed to be sold down the river. I have agreed to be a shliach. And you know what the halacha is of shlichus? Shluchai shaladem k'maisai. Right, a shliach acts for that person, he becomes that person. So he says, Ki lemichya shlachani elikim lefanechem. If a person sees that their job is when they're taking their child to a yeshiva, when you're taking the baby, you're feeding the baby at night, when you're preparing supper for your children even though you're tired, when you're getting up for morning for breakfast when your children, and you're doing it because I am a shlichus, this was my mission, and shluchai shaladem k'maisai. So if you're doing God's work, whose messenger, whose kemaisa are you at that moment? You are standing in the shoes of Kaviyachal, of God, of the Rabbi Yerushalayim. So look how Yosef takes the worst trauma possible, being sold by his brothers, right? And what does he turn it into? He becomes a god. He becomes Shluchai Shalaisai Kamaisai Shaladam Kamais. He says, Lemichya Shlachani Elikim Lefnechem. And I think it's an incredibly empowering message. And when we go to learn or we go to work and we're tired and we don't want to be where we are, and often it takes us to faraway places and long hours and different times, you could say, Lemichya Shlachani, I am a shliach here. And at this point in time, I am doing God's work. Let me share with you a beautiful story. If I said it before, excuse me, but it's such a powerful story. You know, there was a Jew in Posen where Rabbi Akiva Eiger lived. He was a tremendous masmid. He never went to a wedding. He never went to a bar mitzvah. He never went. He used to learn. One time, Rabbi Akiva Eiger said, "I can't go to a certain wedding. It's somebody who needs, the community I should be there. I want you to be be there." And this person came before the smorgasbord. He was the first one there. And he stayed for the smorgasbord, for the chuppah. He didn't run out right after the chuppah. He stayed for the dancing, for the first dance, for the second dance. He stayed till the end of the mitzvah dance, even though I doubt that in Germany they had a mitzvah dance. He was the last person out. And somebody said, "My holy Yiddala, my masmid, what are you doing here through this 6 hours you're here?" And he looked at him and he said, "At this wedding, Rabbi Akiva Eiger sent me. And Shluchai Shaladam Kamaisai, I am Rabbi Akiva Eiger. I'm not giving up 1 second of this." So what do we say? If we take Yosef's attitude and we say, Lemichya Shlachani Elikim Lefnechem, for Yishlachani Elikim, I went to work. Why? Because I was told a father's job is achroi for his family, is achroi for his children. He wants to put them through yeshiva. He wants to marry you of l'shadei chabanes. He wants to be able to give tzedakah. He says, Lemichya Shalchani. At that point in time, do it with the greatest of love. If you do it as a shlichus at that moment, you're not Rabbi Akiva Eiger, you're kaviyachol shliach. Imagine the power of that. This is the message of Yosef, and this shows us how Yosef, in the most incredibly adverse situations, sold the Midyanim to the Mitzrim, to Potiphar. In every situation, he smiled no matter what you threw at him. How could he not smile if he was Rabbi Akiva Eiger at that moment? If he was a Shluchai Shalmakim, Shluchai Derachmana at that moment. This should be a chizuk for all of us as we work through our long, grueling days, taking care of our beautiful parents, children, friends, etc. Let's go to our wonderful guests. We have on the phone with us from Yerushalayim, Rabbi Yochanan Danziger, who's one of the Rabbanim of Nachal Chareidi. He's an alumni of Beis Medrash Gavaya in Lakewood. I believe he learned there for many years. He lived and learned in Lakewood for many years. Welcome, Rabbi Danziger.
Thank you very much for having me.
Rabbi Danziger, you're one of the Rabbanim of Nachal Chareidi, and we hear conflicting reports. We hear Nachal Chareidi is getting really good guys who come to davening 3 times a day, and they're frum, etc. And then from the other side, we've had people who say it's full of shababniks, it's drug users and ladegayers and people who aren't doing anything, and it's getting the worst of the Bachrim, and it's a black eye to Klal Yisrael. Give us a little bit of, before we get into Hashkafa, just what is the Metzias? What is actually happening there?
So the reality is that there is a mix of boys, as there is in most environments. And we have boys who come from stronger environments, boys that come from weaker environments. But all in all, they come from Haredi backgrounds. And the stronger boys are looking for a way to develop themselves for the future, either by working or through education, which is really only achievable by going to the army. And there are boys who are less strong who are really looking to do army service within an environment, a framework that is familiar to them, which is the Haredi environment. And the Nachal Chareidi, Netzach Yehuda Battalion, it's really called both, provides that kind of framework. So are there boys who are weaker? Definitely. Are there boys who are stronger? Definitely. Are most boys somewhere in between? That is also true. And one thing I can say is that at the end of their service, all the boys who come out in a more dedicated, devoted, responsible, stronger way, better sense of Hashem. It may not always translate into the proper Shmiras HaMitzvos that we are accustomed to, but you will find that the boys have a more of a commitment to their Judaism in general.
Well, talk about basics, Shmira, Shabbos, Tefillah. I mean, how do they look like? If somebody were to come, what would he see?
Well, if somebody were to come to the, let's talk about the training base. They are obligated to attend Tefillah 3 times a day. There's no option to stay out. Now, while they're in the shul, is somebody going to force any specific soldier to concentrate on his davening or even to answer Yehei Shmei Rabbah? Absolutely not. Nobody's going to force them to do that. But a soldier who's sitting there and does not want to participate in davening, for example, ends up cleaning the latrines because it is a religious environment, and one of the rules for coming into Nachal Chareidi is that you must daven 3 times a day. Just to give you an example, other rules. The battalion is based on a concept of there are certain fundamental rules that must be followed. Shmira Shabbos, you cannot be Mechal Shabbos in the battalion. That's not allowed. Somebody who is Mechal Shabbos and is caught doing that will be thrown out of the battalion. Does that mean that nobody does it? I'm sure there are people that do it. Do they always get caught? They don't always get caught. But that is the rule of the battalion. And by the way, that's from the army. That's not, the rules that some rabbis made. That is an army agreement that they must daven 3 times a day. They must keep Shabbos on base. They must wear a yarmulke on base. And they cannot view things that are inappropriate on their phones or computers, and nor may they use inappropriate language. Those are the 5 basic rules. And if they don't keep that, the commander has a right to throw them out.
And what's the kashrus like in Netzach Yehuda?
Right. So the kashrus is a very high level. It's something that any Chareidi person would eat from. In fact, when we go to visit the Chayilim on the base, we actually eat that food as well. So it's whatever the strongest hechsher is at the time. The only people who would have an issue with the kashrus there, with the shechita, are Chabadnikim, who are only somebek on their own shechita. So for them, we don't provide special Chabad shechita, but for everybody else, it's the highest hashgacha.
Okay, and when the boys come out, you say for the most part they come out like stronger in Torah mitzvahs?
Well, I said with a stronger commitment to their Judaism, to Yahadut. Now, what does that translate into? For some, it means that they go back to Yeshiva, and we have many boys that go back to Yeshiva after the army. For others, it means that they are more committed to a frum type of lifestyle, usually, I can't say usually, but often not a Chareidi type of lifestyle, but a frum lifestyle with Shmira Shabbos and Taras HaMishpacha and all those things that are extremely important. We have boys who come out and are not frum at all. And that would have happened no matter which environment they would have been in. Had they left yeshiva and gone to work, it may have been exactly the same way. But I say that most of them are stronger because even the boys who are coming out and, let's say, have decided not to be Shomer Mitzvahs the way we understand a person should, the way Shulchan Aruch demands, nevertheless, they have typically a deeper commitment to their own type of avodas Hashem, a connection to Hashem, and a connection to. They want to build families that are frum or frum-like. They don't want a Chiloni lifestyle. Many boys who come out, we find that they're less, the ones who are less frum. After a year or so after they get out of the army, they get married and they build very frum homes. So I would say for the most part, most of the boys that come out end up frummer than when they went in.
And what percentage would you say are frum?
Are frum when they come in?
From when they come in or from when they go out? Pick a time. When they go out, what percentage?
I would say it's probably somewhere around 75%, let's say, when they come in, are really committed to Torah and mitzvos, which means that they will, let's say, they not only agree to do what needs to be done or what's expected of them, but they actually believe it and will do it when they're off base as well. I'd say 25% will do it while they're on base, but will not be shomer mitzvos the way we would expect when they're off base. And I'd say it's probably around that same percentage when they come out.
Okay.
But with the caveat that those 25% when they come out who are the weaker ones, they will have a stronger sense of identity with frumkeit and with Yahadut in general.
Now, there seems to be some controversy whether Rav Steinman was a backer of Nachal Chareidi or not. Do you have any experience with that?
I do. Rav Steinman Zechron Livracha was asked before the founding of Nachal Chareidi. I know the person who asked him, and he was asked to lend support to Nachal Chareidi. In other words, the problem was presented to him that there are boys who were dropping out of yeshiva and stovavim, walking around in the streets with nothing to do, losing their Yiddishkeit and their identity with Yiddishkeit, and whether it was okay to put them into the army. And Rav Steinman had agreed to allow them to go into the army with the proviso that there be certain, what we call Nahalei Netzach, which are the rules for the Netzach battalion, with the Nahalei Netzach being in place. And it was then negotiated with the Department of Defense, and they agreed to help in building such a battalion. So, to the best of my knowledge, after speaking to people who were the ones who actually built the battalion, the Rabbanim who built the battalion, they have told me in Chad Mashmi'i, in a direct way, that Rav Steinman did lend his support to Nachal Chareidi.
Now, there's a letter that is being distributed from Rav Steinman, dated, I think it's Tufshin, I should get the date on that, but it's around 19 years ago, where he writes to Rabbi Danziger that the purpose of Nachal Chareidi is for boys who are over on Chayve Krisis Bolvad. Are you aware of such a letter? Have you seen it?
No, I've not seen such a letter. I'm not aware of such a letter, nor am I aware of the context of that letter. There were many things claimed about what Rav Steinman held, or whether he changed his mind or did not change his mind. I'm just telling you what the Rabbanim who established the battalion have told me.
Do you understand there's no other word to say it except the absolute hatred of some people in the Chareidi community towards Nachal Chareidi? Can you understand it? Can you try to explain that position?
So one of the shitos that we have here is not to get involved in politics. We don't get involved in the actual drafting of soldiers. We don't try to convince boys who are in yeshiva to go to the army, and we don't really involve ourselves in the kinds of politics that go on either pro or against. That having been said, it is obviously perceived as some kind of threat to the Chareidi community that there are boys who would step out of that role of making Torasam Umanusam and and also to participate in something which is perceived, the army, as part of the general Israeli culture. I understand where they're coming from. I don't understand the level of outrage, but given what it is that they are trying to accomplish for their people, I understand why they might perceive this as a threat.
Now, Rabbi Danziger, you are not Israeli, clearly from your accent. You're born and bred in New York. You're a Lakewood Talmud. You moved to Eretz Yisrael. What would inspire you to become a Rav in Nachal Chareidi? And I'm assuming it's not for the money, unless maybe it is at a very high-paying position. What inspired you? Tell us your passion for this.
My passion is a sense of bridging the various populations in Eretz Yisrael. If you want to live in Eretz Yisrael, you have to become part of what goes on here. I want to have hashpah, influence on people who have yet to become observant or recognizing Hashem and Torah and mitzvos. And you can't walk around with your head in the sand, acting as if it's us against them and live in a divided country. That's not something that I see as a place that I want to be in or where Am Yisrael can be. I think that if we want to see the continual unfolding of Hashem's kindness in giving us back Eretz Yisrael and allowing us to build it in the most fantastic way that we are doing it now, even given all its problems and issues, if we want that to happen, then it has to be with a sense of connection to the larger society and a bridging the gaps that stand between the different segments of society. In addition, there's a mitzvah to defend Am Yisrael, and especially not only Jews living anywhere, but L'samo Adam Reyacha is also a mitzvah to defend the land. We all know that on Shabbos, even Al Kash V'Teven, you're allowed to go to war to defend the borders on Shabbos. So it's very, very important to be in a position to defend the land. Who do I want defending the land? I want Dafka people who are not religious, who are not committed to Torah, who are not committed to Hashem and to the furthering of the development of Hashem's kindness in Eretz Yisrael. That's not who I specifically want. I want to see people who are committed to Torah and mitzvos, and that's why I decided to get involved to help motivate frum boys or boys who can be frummer to be able to make their contribution, that the other segments of society will look at them and say, look, this is a Kiddush Shem Shemayim. These are B'nai Torah. These are people who are Shomer Torah and mitzvahs, and Afal Pikein, nevertheless, they go and they fight for Am Yisrael, to defend Am Yisrael, to protect all Jews. And I want to be part of that.
And does it make a Kiddush Hashem?
It definitely makes a Kiddush Hashem. I can tell you that when we have Shabbos meals and where we invite lots of people, often we have soldiers from all walks of life, and many of them are not committed to Torah and mitzvos. I often have boys who have been in Nachal Chareidi or who are currently in Nachal Chareidi at the table, and it makes an incredibly positive impression on those who are not religious and sitting at the table, whether it's just plain citizens or whether it's soldiers. They are very, very positively impressed by the fact that the boys are in Nachal Chareidi, and Gedud Tishim B'Sheva, as it's called, Battalion 97, has won incredible awards across the board from the Ministry of Defense, from all different kinds of places, for their professionalism and their abilities to tackle great challenges in very, very difficult areas. So they've made a name for themselves, and they are known. And when people hear that, you were in Battalion 97, they're very, very impressed.
Now, what would you respond to, let's say, the Satmar faction, or the Notori Karta faction, or the Eidach Reidus faction that says that we would be better off, or as well off, if Eretz Yisrael was, protected by the UN, and it was actually, an Arab country under Arab auspices, protected by the UN. They're afraid of the Gimel Shvuot. They said we would have this Eretz Yisrael under the UN and under an Arab country with the UN policing. How would you respond to that? Not that I know that's an area of expertise for Rav and Nachal Chareidi, but I'm just curious. You've seen a lot more tanks than all of us. So how would you respond?
Well, it's very, very obvious to me what the Arabs would do if Chas v'Chalila HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them the opportunity to do what they do best. I remember being in a demonstration once. I wasn't actually in a demonstration. I was walking by. I went to see it in Kikar Paris in Yerushalayim. That's right by Rechavia. And there were some leftists demonstrating there on the part of, the cruel IDF or something along those lines. It was a B'tzai Shabbos, and I was just looking at them. And a man came along, and he just grabbed me by the arm and started pulling me down the street. It was a frum person, and he said to me, "You know who those people are? Those people are people who hate the Jewish people, and they know nothing about the people that they are talking about, the Arabs." Why? He said, "I grew up in Morocco, wherever it was, I'm not sure where it was," and he said, a Jew couldn't walk on the same street as a Muslim. If a Jew touched fruit in the market, a Muslim would not buy those fruits. And how many times we were threatened with pogroms and how many people were hurt. And he said, these people only knew. Said they're Ashkenazim, they don't know really what the Arabs are like, and that's why they go demonstrate the way they do. So Chas v'Chalila, if these people had their chance to do what they would do, we don't want to think about what would happen. And who stands in the way of what they do? It's only the army that stands in the way of what they do.
And
when I say only the army,
who say
so
the UN would do
response
the same
would
thing.
be, kol chibiotzim yodi, right? And the answer is the motto of our battalion, which is ki hu anosin l'chol koach la'asos choyol, which is the next pasuk, which is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has granted us in his infinite kindness the power to be able to defend ourselves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after 6 million Jews perished, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that it's time for the Jews to be able to defend themselves, and he gives us that ability to do it. What should we do? We should say to Hashem, we don't want your gifts, keep your gifts for yourself. Chas v'Chalila. We are obligated to use all the power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us to defend Am Yisrael. That would be my response.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Danziger. It was an honor to have you on with us.
Okay, thank you, David.
We have on the phone with us from Monsey, New York, Rabbi Chaim Lefkowitz, who's a Talmud of Satmar and Williamsburg, a Talmud of Reb David Soloveitchik in Brisk. He's one of the leading activists, maybe the leading activist in America, against the Giyus B'nai HaYeshivas. He's closely connected to the Askanim in Eretz Yisrael. Welcome, Rabbi Lefkowitz.
Welcome, Rabbi David.
So before we start, I want to share with you a chiddush that I had this morning by davening. That I thought it's, and I say it's Dvar Tova. Somebody came over to me and he said, he runs a big business and he employs a lot of people. And there's so much in the news today about harassment of women. He said he's afraid to open his mouth anymore. What could he say that could be misconstrued? So I told him, and Budraham says on the when he teaches V'harivnu Hashem Elokeinu Divrei Sarascha B'finu, he has a different shot. V'harivnu means make sweet, and he says it's miloshin aroiv avdecha l'toiv. That the Torah should be a custodian, should be a shield, should be a protector. I said, if you're a yeshiva man, you're a ben Torah, you're a chassid, you're an erlich, a nivel peh should never come out of your mouth. Nicht in any company. If you grew up, if the Torah was nichnas into your bones, you should never be saying the wrong thing to a woman. It can't be. I said that's what we say. V'harivnu Hashem Elokeinu es divrei sarascha b'finu. If the Torah gate that ein in the beina, it becomes an arvus. You won't have to worry about it because it's your second nature. I said maybe according to Rabbi Budraham, we have a solution to anybody who's worried about harassment in the current workforce. What do you think of my Torah, Rabbi Lefkowitz?
I think of your Torah like this. The Chaim will say that Shem Shemaim Yimisav al Yotfu. And the Gemara says in Sechtes Brochas that I'm thinking of Yochanan that Meyomov lo higdimoi nochi b'shik, and to say
Shalom,
to say Shalom. And of course, this is the thin line. How do you deal with women in a derech way and simultaneously uphold the laws of Syria and this is where you have the Mesiris Ovis. Everybody sees by their fathers and rabbis how they do it in a way that should be Shem Shemaim, Skadosh al Yatchu. It should be Vaharavnu. The Torah should be Azisa Torah, of course.
Okay, so let's go to our topic. We're talking about Nachal Chareidi. We will have on one of the founders of the Nachal Chareidi, and he says that it's the best yeshiva in the world. He says if you don't go, it's the only yeshiva where if you don't go to daven with the minion 3 times a day, they could throw you in jail. I mean, they mean business over there. He says that a woman is not allowed onto the base. He says his own wife, with her sheitel, and there's no women allowed on the base. He said it's so frum, he said, that the army generals say that it's a kiruv movement. So they're taking boys who don't want to be in yeshiva, and they're putting them into basically where they daven, they protect the country, and he says that is the mission of Nachal Chareidi. And I was curious. I know that there's a lot of antagonism. There's a lot of antithesis to the Nachal Chareidi, and I was curious if we could hear somebody present the other side of the argument here.
Okay, before answering and trying to get into that part of the argument, which, as you know, I've been on your line before, that I grew up in Satmar and Ida Chareidis and in Kirikarta views. So when you discuss Nachal Chareidi, from my point of view and from the Rabbanim and Rebbes from this generation and previous where I grew up, it doesn't come into consideration at all. The phenomenon of a Chareidi battalion in the Israeli army, it's like saying a chazir that has been salted, or it's not basar b'cholov, because the actual essence of the military on its own, the Chareidi, is irrelevant. But I would like to address the issue. But before addressing the issue, you said that you are related to the person who founded Nachal Chareidi.
No. I'm not related. We invited him as a guest.
As a guest. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a typo. Okay, but I'm wondering if you have spoken to him. Does he or anybody involved in setting up Nachal Chareidi, which is something, a new phenomenon in Klal Yisrael, do they have backing of any Rabbanim, any Rosh Yeshiva, any Rebbe?
Yeah, so he said the main backing they had was from Rav Steinman, Zechariah Levracha. He said Rav Steinman was very for it, and he told many boys who were struggling in yeshiva, who didn't want to be in learning, who were just on the verge of becoming Shababnikis, to go there. And he said, and he had startling outcomes when these boys who were just, when somebody's in yeshiva, you have boys, they have no geschmack in learning. They could have learning disabilities. They could be dyslexic. They just don't have, Konsitzfleisch. So what happens when you're unhappy in your environment? You start wondering. It's like Rashi says, "Boy reik ein by mayim." Rashi says, "Mayim bein boy avol nechashim v'akravim yesh boy." If somebody has spare time, if there's no mayim, it's full with nechashim v'akravim. There's no middle ground. So you had all these boys. He said, in the Nachal Chareidi, they get a mission. They're protecting Eretz Yisrael. They have davening. They have learning. They make siyum mesechtis over there. He says, don't let it be full of nechashim v'akravim for these boys. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't use this mashal. Send them to where they can be. They could serve a real mission. So he said, Rav Steinman was the backer.
So in other words, what you're saying, that he is saying, that Nachal Chareidi has been designed for boys who don't have zitzfleisch, so to say, to sit and learn. So instead of roaming the streets, they should have a Chareidi environment and a mission in the military. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
And he's saying that Rav Steinemann was backing this, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, in front of me, I have here an article that has been posted on a known website called Tikara Shabbat, Kovzaim Bekislev. The writer of the article is a guy by the name Yisrael Cohen, and he's quoting Rabbi Sternbuch, which is known as the Rabbit of Aida Aphraidis.
He's been on the program many times. Yeah.
Yes. And he's quoting him. It's in Lashon Kodesh, but I believe he said it in Yiddish. And he says, Hashliyan is Bakish Yeshiva Shalmala, and he's referring to Rav Steinemann. And he's saying, L'tzari Yeshna Machrivim, Kalai Das, Hamaharsim Bekerem Hashem, Lahaisis Chareidim Lihizgayas.
Rabbi Lefkowitz, many of our listeners won't understand you, so translate, okay?
Okay, I'll translate it. Okay, so what is, but don't hold me up responsible to be exact, quote unquote. I'll try my best. He says like this. Unfortunately, there are heretics, maharsim, who entice Chareidim to the military, and they say they're hanging their coat on the hook of Rav Steinemann, and I got a letter from him that this is sheker, and whoever says that he's the one who initiated Nachal Chareidi is an Avon Bal Yechiper, and he also quotes that he wrote as such to Rabbi Danziger. So in this article, I have the letter that Rav Steinemann wrote to Rabbi Danziger, and he wrote as follows, quote, since there is there's going on rumors in the street, unstoppable rumors, as though I am the one who is supporting Nachal Chareidi, that Bachurim Chalushin, meaning weak boys in Limud Torah and Yerushalayim, it's good for them to be there. This is something that not to be anticipated at all. The only discussion has been that boys Mechalal Shabbos, Chai Krisis, and the father wants to rescue him and rescue the street. They should not be a danger for society, and they are unstoppable. This is what the discussion was all about. Aval vada is a over in lo yechipter im shemaitzes a mishtadel ba'izet tirashihi l'mish eine Mechalal Shabbos le'imotzesham. Whoever takes part to get a boy into the military, if he's not a Mechalal Shabbos, he's only weak and limited Torah, it's a sin, an unforgivable sin. And he goes on, and he signs his name.
Who signs his name?
Rav Steinemann. This is the letter to Rav Danziger, which Rav Sternbuch quoted this week in public. And in that article, there is another letter dated Chodesh Sivan Tufshin Samach Aleph by hold on. By Rabbi Yitzchak Levinstein, who was like very, very close to Rav Steinemann, and this letter is to Chaim Sternbuch, which is the son of Rav Sternbuch, and he's referring to a letter that he received from Rav Sternbuch's son, asking on the issue of Nachal Chareidi, as though his question was, is it true? He was trying to refer, is it true that Rav Steinemann is the one who is behind Nachal Chareidi, and he says there's so much pashkevilum going on, and it's a very long letter, but I'll just quote, which is important for this conversation. And it says like this, quote, the whole phenomena of Nachal Chareidi has been established by people shelo yehoyu lehem kol kesher im rabbaini. Va'ad hayoim ein lehem kol kesher. The people who designed Nachal Chareidi have no relationship to Rav Steinemann, and up until today, they are not related. Va'einam boim klal, they don't even come back to him.
So Rabbi Lefkowitz, let me respond to that, okay? I'm just Googled it now. In today's news, you have a general Duv Devani, who founded the Givati Brigade, his experience. He came into Rav Steinman, and Rav Steinman was very excited. I'll read you the quote. He told them all about it. This is how it began. He says he was with a bunch of people. Rav Steinman, okay, 1 second. I was not prepared. The Gabbai said to him, Yehuda, do you not understand? You received a blessing for the establishment of... David Hager says he was by him many times with Bachrim. It's like, so wait, you know what, we've established that you're saying that Rav Steinman did not hold the Nachal Chareidi, okay?
I'm not saying, I'm not
hello.
saying
I'll just tell you,
saying what Rav Steinbuch says and what Rav Steinman himself wrote.
Okay, so what I would ask you to do is if you could just forward us the letter, and then we'll go back to, it's sort of, I wasn't expecting the conversation to go this way because it's sort of universally accepted that he was very pro-Nachal Chareidi. In fact, that stones were thrown at his house and Pashkevilim were hung up. Why would they hang up Pashkevilim about him if he was against it? So, but if we want to, it's always, look, there's always a question of revisionist history, who's right. I accept the fact that you say it's not true. I will investigate it. We will do another week on this. So let's, for the purposes of this conversation, agree that, let's say Rav Steinman did not found it, okay? Just for the purposes, so we can continue the conversation, okay?
Okay, so
we will try to get. We'll have eyewitnesses who say otherwise. But let's assume you have a letter. And look, if he signed such a letter, it's certainly very interesting. Let's examine. Let's assume he did not found it. Talk about your opposition to Nachal Chareidi, not without Rav Steinman's involvement.
Okay. So if we take out Rav Steinman from the equation,
right?
Then and I believe then we take out anybody out of the equation, because as far as we know and as far as even you know, and whoever quotes Rav Steinman, there is no other Rosh Yeshiva, Rebbe, or Tzaddik, or Mashpia in this generation that anybody knows of that officially supports Nachal Chareidi, except of the rumor that Rav Steinman is behind it. And I'm not saying one way or the other if he was behind or not behind. I'm just quoting it. So then,
Rabbi Lefkowitz,
if that's the case,
there's nobody behind it. That's your point.
Okay. If nobody's behind it, so first of all, even before discussing any topic that belongs to Klal Yisrael in general, I'm not a good ladat, and I'm just an activist, and asking, this is definitely a phenomena, a concept that needs tremendous das Torah of the Gedolei Yisrael to look into it, and it's not up for Pushet Yidden like us to go into it. But if you want to get the takeaway of me as a Pushet Yid, I would say as follows. I believe that Klal Yisrael today, in general, is divided in three factions. I'm talking about people who call themselves Chareidim, Shomrei Torah, Mitzvah. And in terms of the union of the Tzava, the military, Israel, the state, Zionism. So there are two extremes. On one extreme is the anti-Zionist, the vocal anti-Zionist, which is Satmer, Haida Chaydes, Derech, followers of Yeshiva Yashan. Now, these people, as I said before, there's nothing more to talk about. There's no such thing as a Nachal Chareidi. There's no Chareidi because even if you have Shmiras HaTorah v'Mitzvahs, the essence of the Israeli military is against the Yid Gimel Ikram. There's no such thing as a Nachal Chareidi. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there's the pro-Zionist, the Mizrahi, Merkez Arav, modern Orthodox, who see in the state as a mitzvah, Yeshiva Yisrael, Schal to the Gila, bringing Mashiach, the way to Mashiach. Now for these people, you don't need Nachal Chareidi. They never looked for Nachal Chareidi. There are quotes of Rav Kook that he's saying that the Chalutzim, even the Machal Shabbos, doing a gewaldige Zach for the actual union of Zionism in the state. So the only remaining question for Nachal Chareidi is a big portion of Klal Yisrael who are in between. They are not vocal pro-Zionists, and they are not vocal anti-Zionists, which is the regular day-to-day Rav Rebbe from Klal Yisrael, the Yeshiva Welt, or the Hasidic Welt. Now, in terms of If it's a yeshiva boy, this wasn't even your question, because you only questioned if he does not belong to yeshiva, just to give him some sort of environment. It should not be go off the derech, and some sort of how should I say, to be civilized in the terms of a military. Now, first of all, just going into particular about Nachal Chareidi itself, the way it's structured, there is no such thing as a Nachal Chareidi today, even in the terms of the people who quote their Chareidi. First of all, the essence of the military as a military has been designed as such, and I would like to quote the words of Ben Gurion, who was the founding father of Zionism. He says like this, as follows, quote, I'll say it in English. For the IDF, there is the responsibility not only for the security of the state, as any other military force in other governments and states. It is for the purpose to be a melting pot for all the goliot, the exiles, who are being gathered in their moledet, in their homeland from across the globe. It's a bais yotzer, it's a factory to melt up a nation. In their Mashiachistisch, messianic envision. And the Tzahal is prepared to bring up a generation of chalutzim, boinai moledet, people who would build the homeland. Our security cannot happen unless we are all melted together.
Rabbi Lefkowitz, I just want to get. So your first point is that it's a melting pot, and I think that there's a fair way to separate and say, when somebody's going to the Tzahal where there's boys and there's girls and there's Russians and French and Canadians and Israelis and Sfardim, Ashkenazim, Freya it's clearly a melting pot. When somebody's going to a separate place where it doesn't allow women on the base, Rabbi Hager says is that the head of all, he said all of the head of military personnel for the whole country is a woman. When she came to the base, she wouldn't walk onto the base. A brigadier general. He said his own wife walked. He said they have to daven 3 times a day or they get locked up. He said that you have every day a siyum ha-masechta over there. I would make the position that you could say a chilik that this is not a melting pot. I mean, it seems very, just let's talk of just rationally. It seems now your second. So I'm just trying to say how he would respond because he's not here. And the other point is you say that Shabbos has no tam v'Shabbos. I don't know. Have you ever been on the base? I don't know. But would you? So Rabbi Lefkowitz, would you, if you were invited to go and see if it's true, would you go?
David, first of all, if I were invited, I wouldn't step a foot in step a foot because the way I've been brought up, and I believe that this is the consensus of all the Israel that the Tzahal is a mokum of meanness because of the idea of the Tzahal. But I'm blessed.
Wait. Well, let me just go back.
I'm just talking in general for people that coming from a different walk of life. I'm just stating the fact that Nachal Chareidi today is not Chareidi. It's just a sugarcoating.
But
now the only question remains, how about if there is a possibility to make it through Chareidi, you make a mikvah over there and they'll put on the Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and everything is going to be betachlis hakashus v'hadikdik possible, which I don't believe this is even b'metzias to happen. But let's assume that there is a possibility. Then there's the second argument that the essence, the spirit of the IDF, although it's not a melting pot in Shmiras HaTorah v'Mitzvahs, when Ben Gurion said that the Tzahal should be a melting pot, he did not mean that people should stop putting on film. This is not the definition. His definition was of a melting pot that the people should walk in as a Yehudi and walk out as a Yisraeli, with a national identity, being that Yom Ha'atzmaut is a Chag HaMoladet. The flag is our flag. The national anthem is our nationality. And if you take this out of the Tzahal, there is no Tzahal at all. But this is what the Tzahal is all about.
But Rabbi Lefkowitz, Ponevezh Yeshiva has an Israeli flag on Yom Ha'atzmaut. I mean, if your position is that Nachal Chareidi is bad because you're anti-Zionist, I can accept that. I accept that you have a right to be anti-Zionist, but that's not a particular attack on Nachal Chareidi. If you're anti-Zionist, I don't think you should be living in Israel at all. I mean, I think it's questionable. If somebody's really anti-Zionist, they say, look, I don't want to take the electricity, I don't want to take the roads, I don't want to take the medical services, I don't want to, all these people. So I think if you're anti-Zionist, it's a wonderful thing. You shouldn't visit Eretz Yisrael. You shouldn't go to Eretz Yisrael. You shouldn't learn in Brisk. Right? There shouldn't be a big Satma contingency in Eretz Yisrael. I think a person, that would be the right way to do it. And somebody says, look, I have that opinion. I could say, Bavakasha, you have a right to your Shita. There's nothing necessarily negative Torah about having such a Shita. But that is not an attack on Nachal Chareidi per se. You're saying, I am against Eretz Yisrael, and I can accept that position. But if somebody does believe that there is living in Eretz Yisrael, that there is a mitzvah of Yishuv, that there is a reason that Klal Yisrael should have a protection, that Eretz Yisrael is a good thing for Klal Yisrael today, the question is, in such a situation, is Nachal Chareidi good or bad?
Okay, I think you're taking it to the other extreme, and if you want to touch on that topic, how about living in Eretz Yisrael and going to Brisk, and being, how can you be in the Tirikart and Satmar in Eretz Yisrael? This is a discussion on its own. And now when you say that the Panovich Yeshiva is raising the flag and Yom HaTzmaut, I believe so. I've never been in Panovich. I don't know what it is, but I believe it's just superficial. It's just a way of Hanifa for the money they're getting. But I don't believe that any boy in Panovich identifies himself as Yom HaTzmaut, as any holiday or any special day or anything at all with a national anthem or with a flag. It's just that the leadership of Panovich, because of the funds that they receive, they believe it's fit to put up a flag. But going to the IDF, being part of it, it's not superficial. This is what it is. This is what nationalism and Zionism is all about. Now, IDF, in whichever shape or form, is the symbol of the nationalistic movement of Zionism. It could be sugar-coated to put up a kapata, a streimel, a spadik, a frak, a kailis. It's irrelevant. But
so Rabbi Lefkowitz, let me ask you a question. Before the war, the Aguda and many of the Chareidi, much of the Chareidi, certainly in Hungary, were virulently anti-Zionist. And when, let's say, Jabotinsky came to Europe before the war, and he said, leave the Gullus, or the Gullus will destroy you, they threw him out of Brisk, they threw him out of all these places, right? World War II came, and he was right. I mean, leave the Gullus, or the Gullus will liquidate you. That was his Lashon. Look, Rabbi Yochanan himself died in the Sixth Fort, I think it was called. He was killed, right? As did most of the Yiddishkeit of Lita, 99% of the Yiddishkeit in Lita, 70, so probably 85% of the Yiddishkeit in Poland. And which is why post-war, the Aguda is not anti. It works with the Medina. Do you think, looking back historically, that maybe Jabotinsky was right when he said liquidate the Gullus, or the Gullus will liquidate you, and maybe a few million more Jews could have been saved had they gone up to Eretz Yisrael?
Chaz v'sholom. Chaz v'sholom. The Torah is nitzchias. Mizoysa Torah l'ishaim mechalefet v'loysa hay Torah cheres ma'isa boyre is borach shemor. And when Rabbi Wasserman said something, he was Torah. He was a Talmud of his Prophet Chaim, and he said what the Torah, what is Torah. Now to say that it turned out that Jabotinsky was right, and at the end of the war, God forbid, Rabbi Wasserman would agree to him because of the war. It's just stupid as stupid can be, and it's mahararach even to say such a quote. Rabbi Wasserman was yelling while Europe was already burning. With the fires, the ovens have been put on, and he's saying this is what is happening and why it's happening. In other words, what he was saying Klal Yisrael, do tshuva and don't go after the nationalistic movement. Now you're saying that after the war, the Agida joined Zionism and check it. None of the Gedolah Agida, none of them, which I know of, maybe there is some hidden quote, who even said to go to the votes or whatever, said any pro-nationalistic, pro-Zionist statement.
They're part of the government, for heaven's sake. They sit in the government, for heaven's sake.
They sit in the government because they looked at it. And I think I had that argument with you.
They're the ministers. They're the ministers of the government.
As joining the the Chaim in Poland as joining throughout the Golas, there were people in, like the Barbanel was part of the Spanish government. So they looked at it as a goyish apikarsische government that you got to be into it to fight it. That's it.
Fight? Are they there to fight? Is Litzman fighting it? Is he fighting? They're not fighting it. They're not looking for its downfall. They're taking. There's the Minister of Health. That's not fighting it.
Yeah. First of all, becoming ministers of health and going into the coalition. This happened just in the later years. The original Gedola Gide after the war, they were very much so that even they send
50
in
years.
in the Knesset.
60 years they're part of it.
Yeah, just to fight for the rights of the Chareidim. Unfortunately, what happened, and this is what the Satmarut was yelling and screaming, that this is going to end up, that you're going to become part and one and the same. And this is unfortunately what's happening in front of our eyes. But to quote anybody that they became pro-nationalist, and this is why none of them had such an idea to send a boy, even a schwache boy, even a skana of the Derech into the army.
So Rabbi Lefkowitz, we're going to bring many witnesses on who've heard from Rav Steinman to go to Nachal Chareidi. We'll have, let's say, we'll bring Eidim who heard it from him firsthand. Ish mipi ish. How would you respond to that?
If I would respond, regardless of it's Rav Steinman or anybody, since the IDF is nationalism is meanness, it's an avodah zarah or avodah zarah b'shittas. So to put in a boy into such a matziv, that's I wouldn't believe that a Gudel B'Yisrael, true Gudel B'Yisrael, should give such a psak. Like it's just the other way around. Even if you say that there is a possibility to get a boy in there, it will be more of a boy who is a staunch Yeshiva, a staunch Oved Hashem, a gewaldige, he's stark. But to take a schwache bocher, to put him in an environment which the whole environment is dias kavzus and avodah zarah b'shittus, the way Rabbi Yochanan quotes it, I wouldn't accept it. I wouldn't accept
Rabbi
anybody
Lefkowitz
said as such.
So you believe Zionism is avodah zarah?
It's worse than avodah zarah. It's a pikarsus. It's mean.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, because you're a Satmar Talmud, and I asked you this before, but I didn't get a response. The Satmar Rebbe escaped Europe on a Zionist passport, on a Zionist train. Are you allowed to be nene me'atzei shera for refuah? If somebody's going to die and they say, use avodah zarah to die, or you'll die, what's the halacha? Mavur and Rambam and Hilchos avodah zarah, you chayiv misa. Is even ba'onis ba'atzei shera, right? In Perik Daled of avodah zarah. How was he? If he believed there was avodah zarah, how was he allowed to escape? Unless you say he was over chas v'shalom achayvik niseskila, which I don't believe. So let me make my point. My point is he clearly felt it was not avodah zarah, because you're not allowed to be nisrapa ba'atzei shera. I think I'm being it's a pircha minei ubei. He couldn't have believed it's avodah zarah. I will not accept that the Satmar Rebbe was nene me'atzei shera. Was nisrapa me'atzei shera.
In other words, what you're saying, the Satmar Rebbe wrote a Sefer V'Yol Moshe, and by the way, I forgot to mention that on that same blog, there is an article of a picture of the Sefer V'Yol Moshe with Rav Steinman's name and signature on it that I bought a few years ago before the election, studying the V'Yol Moshe.
I have it too. I have it too.
Okay. So in other words, what you're saying is, you're telling me like this. The Satmar Rebbe was the age of 70 or 80 when he wrote the V'Yol Moshe. He had no extra minute to his life. He wrote a Sefer as thick as a Bava Batra Gemara. The whole Sefer is based upon that it's meanness and tzionis and avodah zarah and whatnot, going on and on and on and on in many of his swerim and his drushes. And he himself was hypocritical, as he didn't believe what he wrote, and therefore he couldn't care less to being rescued through design. This is what you're arguing. But let me finish.
Yeah, okay.
I think you forgot. I had that argument with you before at the previous count. I have been on your line,
right?
And it's documented, and we can make a whole topic on this on its own. That this train that the Satmar was sitting on from Belgium going to Switzerland, although the Zionists may claim that this was their train, it's just the other way around. This train has been funded by an office in Avad Atzula in Budapest. Chaim wrote, and many other activists have been involved in it. They subsidize the money for the train, but since those whoever Kastner and his buddies were in the leadership, they jumped on the bandwagon of a train that has been paid by non-Zionist, anti-Zionist Jews. In other words, it's not the Zionists who saved the Satmaruv. It's unfortunately that the Satmaruv and the people who supported the train saved the Zionists that got onto this train.
So let's continue this thought, okay? It's called the Kastner train. Even those who say he gave money don't deny that Kastner was the one who did all the negotiations with the Nazis. Even the guy who wrote the book that you discussed, right? So I want to ask you a question. If I own an Atzei Asherah, somebody owns an Atzei Asherah, Father Peter owns an Atzei Asherah, and a few Jews come and they chip in to help pay for the Atzei Asherah. Are you allowed to be Nisrapa with an Atzei Asherah?
First of all,
are you allowed to use that Zara that you paid for?
And so
let me tell you my solution. Your solution is that he was Nisrapa with an Atzei Asherah because he chipped in, and my answer is that when he writes he's Avodah Zara, he doesn't mean it's Avodah Zara. He's using it as a mushal of something that's dangerous, that could lead to bad areas. If it was an Avodah Zara, they wouldn't be allowed to. Let me ask you, in Eretz Yisrael today, you learned in Brisk. Did you use the buses? Did you go to the Dakta? When all the people, all the Neturei Karta or the Eidach Redis, they give birth. They go to Shari Chesed or Shari Tzedek or to one of those hospitals there, right? How do they do that? They're being Nene Me Avodah Zara, according to you. The answer is it's a maratis. How could it be Avodah Zara? They would all be Chayiv Misa. It means it's a mashal for a bad thing. Otherwise, it would be Asa.
There are different rules and regulations, and therefore, the Satmaruv, which he is the one who wrote Hilchos Avodah Zara for this generation, and if he believed so, and he's talking about in his Mamre Yeshiva Yisrael, he says it's the other way around, that when you build anti-Zionist institutions today in Israel that don't take part in the Bechiris and they don't take part in the voting system, you're building an anti-Zionist movement. It's a Mechama B'Avodah Zara.
Rabbi Lefkowitz, I want to ask you a question. I went through the Bayis Hazman, I went through all the letters from Rabbi Yochanan. Do you think that things could change with time, that maybe, a Republican government could become a Democratic, like here in the United States? We saw, yesterday was Obama, who was, the Nishkin Grace Oyev Eretz Yisrael, super Democrat. Today we have Trump. Do you believe that over time governments can change?
Definitely. Governments can change, political parties can change,
and philosophy can change.
But Dias Koshevers cannot change.
Well,
nationalism in Klal Yisrael is a new phenomenon.
I understand that, but do you believe that
you cannot take...
Rabbi Lefkowitz, let me just finish. Do you believe that the dais of the last government could be different than the dais of the new government?
Definitely.
Okay, we had an Israeli brigadier general say that Israel has no interest anymore. Maybe once it was a melting pot. We have no interest. He was saying that Tzahal in general, and we'll ask the Nachal Chareidi. He says that they have nothing to do with the rest of the army. Are you a melting pot? Do you believe that things can change?
So in other words, what you're putting up, a hypothetical question.
Right, hypothetical question.
There is not going to be a flag anymore. There's not going to be a Yom Ha'atzmaut. There's not going to be a national
I'm not saying that.
It's only going to be just in terms of security and protection. Period. This is what the Tzahal is going to be all about. And then you're putting up a question how to do with it.
No. That's not my question. Let me ask the question differently. Rabbi Yochanan writes, when he writes about them, he says they want to be Maharis, Torah, and Yiddishkeit. The Tzionim, right?
No.
I have the letters in front of me. He says that they want.
I don't know what you're looking at, but
I'll post it online.
It's called Ikvus of the Mashiach. I think he wrote it while what Ikvus of the Mashiach is in Yiddish. I have it in print. I can send it for the audience to look at it. And when he's talking about it, he's not talking about Ikr Yiddishkeit. He's talking about the concept of nationalism. He's talking that nationalism per se is avodah zarah. It's a dire cause. Nationalism doesn't have nothing to do with Kiras HaTorah. You could be a Chareidi Shomer Torah mitzvahs going in mikveh 3 times a day and still be a nationalist.
Define nationalism.
Nationalism means identity by a flag, by a nation. Jews have no nationalism. Jews have.
We had the Golem in the Midbar. Wait, we had the Golem in the Midbar. We had flags in the Midbar.
The flags in the Midbar was we don't understand what it was all about, but there was no. We had a Malchus by David. We had Malchus
before Malchus.
We had a Malchus, and that's it. Period. Once we were having exile, we never identified ourselves as a nationhood, as being part of an imma b'inu immas, as it says in Megillas Atzmaut. We're not a nation between nations. We have a Torah and mitzvahs. We're the same Jew in Jerusalem, the same Jew in Melbourne, Australia, the same Jew in Manchester, England. We have the same concept, the same feeling, the same theory. Shvarti, Chareidi, Ashkenazi, Yeshivish, Litvish, regardless.
Right.
So we have no national identity.
What's define nationalism? But what you just said is a national identity.
No,
you said we're the same Jew in England, and a guy would say that's a national identity.
Yes, it's an identity that we're Am Yisrael, Am Lekayanko.
What does Am mean? What does the word Am mean? Could you just define, what does Am mean in English? Translate Am. Am means a nation. Am Yisrael, the nation of Klal Yisrael. Isn't that nationalism?
You know what? It was a saying of Satmaru. How do you say Erlich Yid in Hebrew? There is an Am in English. There is an English expression of an Am, of a nation, and there is a Yiddish and a Shumatig, spiritual expression of a nation. They may be used with the same word, the same phrase, the same terminology, with a totally different meaning. By a goy, and by the Zionim that said Kechala Goyim by Yisrael, it's a nation between nations. We are like the Swiss, we are like the French, like the Portuguese.
So I'm asking you.
We have no identity except that we are Zera, Avrom, Yitzchak, Yankov.
So if that would change, Rabbi Lefkowitz, do you believe that it could change, that we could have a nation that says Am Yisrael, that says we want to live in Eretz Yisrael, and we want to have a flag, and we want to protect ourselves, and we believe in the Borei Olam, right? We say the Ani Mamins every day. Is that something that you believe could? If that would happen, would you be okay with it?
It cannot happen. It cannot happen. It's like saying like the Yidden who followed Yoshka, Jesus.
Why can't it happen? Why can't it happen?
It's a Kozevet.
What's Kozevet about it? Which part of it?
The part of it, national identity. National identity.
Am Yisrael, the nation of Klal Yisrael.
No, Am Yisrael. Not a definition with the land. We are not defined with the land. We're not defined with the language. We're defined being people shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it.
Wait. It says Leishinu es L'Shainam was one of the reasons there was Eicha to go out of Mitzrayim. What do you mean they're not defined with a language?
Yes, but what happened in exile? What was the language? The language throughout ages till Zionism was what? Was Yiddish. What is Yiddish? And when you go into the history with Yiddish is not a language. Yiddish is a Golos language. It picked up words. But
how could you say we're not defined by a language then? When Chazal say Leishinu es L'Shainam, how could you say we're not defined by a language?
Then it means L'Shain Ivri, whatever the language was. And in today's time, what it means is the Yiddish language. Yes, unfortunately,
what do the Sfardim do? The Sfardim don't speak Yiddish. The Sfardim don't speak. Are they not part of Klal Yisrael?
No. The Sfardim happens to be that till they came to Israel, they spoke Ladino, which was not true Lashon Kodesh. Was a mixed up language. But what happened was that when ended up in Israel, and this is one of the reasons they created Sfas Ivri, the Hebrew language, was part of the melting pot to identify all Jews in terms of a language as a nationhood. And the whole language came of Apikorson, the idea that we are identified by a language.
Do you believe that we could have a government that believes in the Rabbeinu Shalom, that believes that the Ikka Mitzvah in the Torah, it says Kol Adar B'chutz La'aretz K'mi She'elei Aleika, that the Ikka Mitzvah in the Torah is Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, that the language is Shelo Shinu Es L'Shainim. Do you believe that if such a thing would happen, that you could join it?
If it's in the form of a government and they believe so, it's like believing that the Lulav is not a Lulav, but
why? Why is that? Where does it say in Shulchan Aruch that you can't have a government? Where does it say? But where does it say in Shulchan Aruch you shouldn't have a government?
There's no such thing as a Yiddish government for Am Yisrael, the Eretz Yisrael, as Managulis. And there's no Gadol Yisrael ever said so.
But why not?
Because it's the heper of the idea of Golus. And if you want to study it more diligently, there's a Sefer Netzach Yisrael from the Maral Prague on the whole concept of Golus. There's Perik after Perik after Perik.
Because philosophically,
defines what the exile state of Klal Yisrael is. So the Rabbi Yisrael designed the plan for us. How would you know what a Jew is all about? Who says Hanukkah? Who says anything? We have a Torah, we have a Messiah, we have a definition that we makabel derech hadoy. So now you say that maybe there's going to come a time in this generation that we're going to redefine or reform Judaism, reform of a Chema, of a Chareidiwith state. It could happen, and it's happening.
But Rabbi Lefkowitz, respectfully, Rabbi Lefkowitz, we live by the Shulchan Aruch. We're not Yidden before Matan Torah, right? It doesn't say in the Shulchan Aruch that you can't have a government. Any place. And I learned that Daled Chalkei Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't say any place you can't have a government. Even the Gimel Shvuos, they're not brought by anybody Halacha. It doesn't. Yes, the Golus represents the way Klal Yisrael lived for a few thousand years. The Golus is a klola. So if the Rebbeinu Shalom B'Rov Tuvav wants to take away a little bit of the bite of Golus, it doesn't say any place in the Shulchan Aruch you can't have a government if the government is al pi halacha.
You know, there's a very sharp word from the Brisker Rov, not to take it literally, just to take the concept off of it. And he said like this, that the Shulchan Aruch is designed for Gaira mit Baal Tshuva. We don't need to look in Shulchan Aruch, we have Messiah Service. But don't take
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I spent my whole life living by the Shulchan Aruch. I don't understand.
Chas v'shalom. I just want to explain what the Brisker Rov is saying. He's saying like this. Shulchan Aruch is piskei halachas, halacha, what to do and not to do. There are things, to say Moidani does not also change Shulchan Aruch. To go with a yarmulke, you could get away without going with a yarmulke, but there's a mahut Klal Yisrael which has been turned in from generation to generation, from father to son, from Rebbe to Talmud, doir achar doir achar doir achar doir. Until today's date, which is Chanukah Tufshi and Ayeches, we have no real Gadol B'Yisrael except of the pro-Zionist camp of Rav Kook and his followers that has designed a Chareidische Medina should be part of Klal Yisrael. And you're asking a hypothetical question. If there is going to stand up a new generation, God forbid it could happen, movements happen, and as the way it looks right now, we are heading unfortunately into this direction that the Medina is becoming firm by the day. And very possibly so that we're going to end up with a Chareidische Rosh Mamshula and a Chareidische Mefaked and maybe even Rosh Yeshivas in the military.
And what would you do then?
This is not going to change the essence of Zionism and the essence of a state. It is what it is. I can say it again and again and again. But you're saying
that Zionism has become something that is unchangeable, immovable. It's basically become Gzeres HaKosav Zionism, and it cannot change forever.
It's not Gzeres HaKosav. It is what it is. You cannot change. Can you make a Jewish Christianity? There are Judeo-Christians. Can you make Jewish Islam? You cannot do it. Islam is Islam. Christianity is Christianity. Zionism is Zionism. This is what it was held by all Gedolei Yisrael up until today. The only question is what Rav Steinemann held. I don't know. I'm just quoting his letter, and you may bring up someone else who says that he was pro-Zionist, but this is not something that I'm going to argue with what he held.
Okay.
But as far as we know, there is no Gadol B'Yisrael, there is no Rebbe, no Rosh Yeshiva, no Maspia to this date in Yehadus Achraidus, Orthodox Judaism, who is pro-Zionist. I don't know of anyone.
I know. I learned in the Mirayi Yeshiva, Chaim Shmulevitz, just my Rosh Yeshiva was very pro-Zionist. Okay, the part of Israel was pro-Zionist. Most of the Gedolim who joined our good, they were pro-Zionist. They held, and let me tell you, they held that there are very bad things about Zionism and that there are many kaifrim there, right? But like Yaakov Avinu saw.
Let me finish.
The
state is a Yiddish is ours.
They felt that the Yiddish estate is a wonderful thing for Klal Yisrael, for the survival of that didn't have to have a place to go. And but let me say, in the beginning, let me finish with this thing. In the beginning, Yaakov Avinu, who was Titan Emes LeYaakov, thought that Emes is black and white. And like the rewrites and the Zohar writes, he spent 14 years in the house of Lavan, or 7 years, making akudim, nekudim, ubrudim, understanding that there's good and there's bad mixed up all over. There are good people who do bad things. There are bad people who do good things. There's nobody I know who's Kulei Tov. Satma, there's a lot of chesed, also has, sadly, a big issue with kids going off the derech. The best yeshivas have problems. The worst yeshivas have erlicha people. Akudim, nekudim. It's not black and white. A mature emes realizes there are different colors, so they recognize that, yes, there are real issues with Zionism. On the other hand, post-Holocaust, a Jew needs a place to go. And therefore, when there were wars, Chaim used to open up Dar and Kodesh when I was in Yeshiva, and he would stand there crying with his head being mispal for the soldiers who were protecting, who according to Halacha have a din of doing a Mulchemes Mitzvah, which the Bach brings, Halacha, is even Bizman Hazeh. So I think, yes, that there are good things and there are bad things, and the Gedolim that I knew, which included the Stipler, who I personally knew, and Rav Shach, and Rav Shlomo Zalman, who said, it's in writing, he said, if you want to go be mispal by a soldier who died al Kiddush Hashem, and Reb Chaim, they did not, and these are people I knew personally. This is not Ishmi Piyish. I could say this myself.
Listen, I didn't know them because I was not in need, but if that's the case, I have a big kasha, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz and whoever you mentioned.
Yeah.
Why didn't they? If it's such a holy mitzvah of the land and everything, why didn't they send their own yeshiva boys, like a tchila, not with all kind of excuses because of the Derech? Just join the military to do this holy mitzvah. There's a Halacha Shabbos. Listen. Halacha Shabbos is Shin Kuf Ches by Hilchas Refuah by Pekiyas Nefesh. It says mitzvah b'gedolim when there is a time of Pekiyas Nefesh. The Gedolim Yisroel should do it. So according to you, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz should have joined the military. He should have been the mafaked, and the boys should be the soldiers.
And if you ask the Gedolim today, including Rav Steinman's closest person, right? He was been on our program. From Yad Aaron, Rav Zolti's son-in-law, he would say that it's true that the soldiers are doing a holy thing, but there's no holier thing than Limud HaTorah. That's what he would respond.
There's no holy thing, no. And Shulchan Aruch says otherwise, that in Shas Askana, mitzvah, the Gedolim Yisroel, Yait Hechos in the Cheder, V'chalam Machepot.
Right, that's not in Shulchan Shabbos.
It's not saying Shulchan Aruch, but this is in Shulchan Aruch and Shabbos.
It's in Saitim and Test the Gemara you're quoting. So if you ask them, they will explain to you why, and even, which is a discussion, even if it's Kala Mechupasa, why a Ben Torah doesn't go out. But we've had him on the program. He said they do wonderful things. But Limud HaTorah,
why isn't there any letter from any Rosh Yeshiva that someone is not a Ben Torah should do this holy mitzvah? It's like joining the Hatzolah, like joining Chareidiwith. Should do the whole mitzvah of serving in the military. Let them write it openly. Why are they hiding in the just saying Ishmi Piyish?
I'll tell you why. I think that the reason is when Rav Steinman came out and they said he was pro, you'll hear David Hager says that he was pro the Nachal Chareidi. They hung up Pashkevilim about him. There was a Pashkevil going around today in Eretz Yisrael. I saw it online. Calling him a Russia for backing Nachal Chareidi. You say he didn't back it. The Ar Sameach already in. I'm guessing. I have the letter. It's like in 1910 or 1915 when he was. No, I'm sorry. It was post Balfour Declaration. He writes that even if you're chayshish for the Gimel Shavuos, now that you have the consent of the Umas Olam, of the UN, or it was pre-UN, it was Balfour, he says, Baruch Hashem, the Gimel Shavuos are not negay anymore.
Okay, I know.
I'll
see what he's saying. He's quoting Sar Pachad HaShvius. This is what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly. And you would agree that you would agree he was a God Ladar, no? He was,
but
Chaim Brisker wanted to get a Haskama from him but
it happens to be that now he was now that we know what the Balfour Declaration was all about, he was talking about history was happening, and especially today, you see what is happening right now in front of our eyes. that President Donald Trump announced Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state, and the entire European Union, and all Islamic nations, and the UN, everybody condemned it. So it's not black and white that all Emes Olam agreed as such as a Jewish state and Jerusalem as its capital. It's not Parsha whatsoever.
Okay,
and if there are somebody who would have been today, he would revise this psak because the psak is based on fact, and the fact of today is that the consensus of the Emes Olam is totally different.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you disagree with our Sameach.
No. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying that disagree. There's just Sameach is basing his psak on a fact, and the fact is a little different.
Rabbi Lefkowitz, it's always enjoyable having you on. Have a wonderful
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Very good. Bye-bye.
We have on the phone with us from the neighborhood of Ashdod, Rabbi Rabbi Gross. He's Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva's Derech, Chaim, Eretz Yisrael's first Chareidi Hesder Yeshiva. I'm not even going to try to explain that to you. These are very nuanced words, so I'm going to welcome Rabbi Karmi, and Rabbi Karmi will explain this. Welcome, Rabbi Karmi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Rabbi Karmi, could you explain to Americans what it means, the first Chareidi Hesder Yeshiva? Many of us don't know what a Hesder Yeshiva is, and a Chareidi Hesder Yeshiva, we certainly don't know, so if you could explain it.
Okay, it's all quite new, even though we're in our fifth year now, Baruch Hashem. The idea about a Chareidi Hesder Yeshiva is that there are quite a number of boys who are in the Chareidi, which I guess you listeners do know what that is, the ultra-Orthodox world. So boys who find themselves, let's say, the hat and jacket type of boy, black kippah, black and white dress, more or less. And these are boys who have looked at the option of being a full-time learner, which, as you know, in Eretz Yisrael, until now has been pretty much their only option, to go into yeshiva and then on to being an avrech. And there are many boys who've come to the realization that that's not really for them. In other words, these are boys who are still interested in learning, they're still interested in growing as a Talmid Chacham, but at the same time, these are boys who also want to be able to earn a degree and want to be able to find a good parnasa, to be mefarnas their families. They look at the rampant poverty in the Chareidi world. It's not something they want either. And but more of it is really around, I think, the fact that just being an avrech, sitting in yeshiva for the rest of their life, is not something that really speaks to them. And at the same time, these boys also realize that as is the case in Eretz Yisrael, that if you're going to get a job, you're going to be in Mefarnas Mishpacha, you're not going to be serving your country in the Koslei Beis HaMedrash, then you have to serve in the army. And also to create a way for all that to come together, to be able to, number one, be able to sit and learn seriously, number two, to be able to take college credits, academic credits here towards building a degree, and at the same time being able to, at some point, serve in the army in a significant way, but also everything within a Chareidi, in a shamor, in a protected environment, let's say. And so we put together a program in Yeshiva here, and that's what Chareidi Hesder means. Chareidi means, as we said, the type of boys, and Hesder are boys who do army service. Now, until now, the only army service that religious boys did was the Dati Lumi, the regular Hesder yeshivas, which many have heard of. And those yeshivas are only learning and army. They do not do any type of academic classes. And it's a 5-year program usually, and that's the regular Hesder. Part of the time they're in the army, they're all in combat units, and part of the time in yeshiva. That wasn't going to work for a Chareidi boy. So around 7 years ago, we began the process within the Knesset and members of Knesset, Defense Ministry, the IDF, who very much want Chareidim to join the army and even more so the workforce. And we set up our own Hesder. Hesder simply means an agreement, like a Sidur. That's what Hesder means. And it's an agreement between us and the army, and they have a special agreement for Chareidi boys. And just very quickly, what the boys do by us is it's a 4-year program. The first 2 years, they learn 2 starim here in the yeshiva. At night, they learn towards a degree in computer sciences. We have the computer classes and the accredited classes are found on our campus. And after 2 years, they're drafted into the Army into technology units. And in those technology units, they work in the Army in these units for 2 years. They work there, basically flip their day from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. They're in the Army in the technology units. And at night, they're able to come back to the yeshiva and learn a night seder. So even when they're in the Army, they're in a much more protected environment. They don't stay on bases. There's no overnighting bases. It's not totally protected, but it's a very viable solution. And so the boys, after those 4 years, have learned for 4 years. They've, Baruch Hashem, grown in Torah, and at the same time, they've worked significantly towards a degree, and plus they've done their Army service, in which they've served the country and also gained valuable work experience at the same time. So we call it a win-win. That's
Rabbi Karmi,
much the program.
Has there been opposition to you?
B'li and Hara, if I had a piece of wood in front of me, I would knock on it. I don't know if you're supposed to do that. B'li and Hara, no. There has been no opposition. And I think it's because we don't claim to be the answer for the Chareidi world. The Chareidi world, Baruch Hashem, does great, and we do not claim to be that even boys who are learning seriously should come to our yeshiva. We want boys who are in yeshiva and learning yeshiva. Baruch Hashem, Israel needs them. We're talking about boys who like I said before, who have realized that's not going to be their path. Again, they're not off. We don't deal with boys who are off the deck. We don't deal with boys who can't learn. We don't deal. Quite the opposite. The boys actually learning more by us. We're dealing with boys. If they were in a regular yeshiva, they'd be learning a couple hours here, coming late for davening, not really taking it seriously. But they still want to learn. They still want to be part of yeshiva. So the fact that we don't recruit from yeshiva, we don't go into yeshivas, it's not our style. Boys who want us find us.
And how are you different from Hesder?
We're not a combat. Boys for us don't go into combat units. It has the yeshiva. The boys, they will go into regular combat units, and in those combat units, you'll find, they'll be exposed. They have to stay overnight in there. They have to they're on the base all the time, in a day and night, Shabbosos, everything, and they're exposed to the regular community in a very, very significant way. And that even though there are now some, like the Nachal Chareidi, there's Givati Chareidi, there's even Sanchanim Chareidi, the paratroopers have a Chareidi unit, but still those really aren't for the boys that we're talking about. We're talking about boys who really want to learn, and the Dati Leumi has there is around 2.5 years in the Army, like I said, in regular combat units, and 2.5 years in the yeshiva.
So this is sort of white collar. This would be a white collar Hesder in the respect that they don't go to combat, but they spend time in offices, I guess, doing some type of electrical engineering.
Well, there's computer programming, cyber stuff, cyber defense, cyber attack. Depends how good they are, but it's pretty high level stuff.
So this was formed because of the fact that the Nachal Chareidi actually do see combat. That is the difference.
Yeah, now the Nachal Chareidi, or like all the Givati Chareidi, the others are meant for boys who have finished their learning careers. They have decided they don't want to learn anymore, or maybe a half hour, an hour a day. We're talking about boys who want to learn.
Rabbi Gross, what is your opinion of Nachal Chareidi?
I think Nachal Chareidi does an excellent job. It's like anything in the world. There are some boys who it's a fantastic, life-changing, life-altering, who go in there very, very shaky and come out really just fantastic people. And you'll find, boys who aren't successful there, like everything else in the world. It runs on a different model than we use. The model that we're using is a model that believes that we should prepare the boys for the Army, prepare them for work afterwards. So, the Nachal Chareidi will make sure that all the years in the Army, they'll never be together with women, and there are no females anywhere near them. Our shita is a little different because we know we're preparing them for the workforce.
Now, do you understand? It's hard for Rabbi Karmi, from us for a distance. It's hard to understand. Yeah. Do you understand like the rabid hate and opposition to Nachal Chareidi, which, from the way you describe it, it seems to be basically a kosher army for religious boys? What is the absolute? When they come to neighborhoods, they're beaten up. There's videos. What is that rabid anger about?
Well, it's like any type of people who are, I guess, sort of racist, and that people look on the outside and don't look on the inside. The boys who you get the rabid opposition to are not necessarily Nachal Chareidi boys. It could be any Chareidi person who is in the army. They could be in 30 or 40 different units. Nachal Chareidi is just one of the different places where a Chareidi boy might go. So any Chareidi soldier, if he walks into a Chareidi neighborhood, not all, depends where, will get that type of opposition. And by the way, it should be very, very clear that there are very few places that a Chareidi soldier will walk into that he will get that type of opposition. You're talking about maybe one neighborhood in Beit Shemesh, maybe Mea Sharim. So you're talking about maybe two places in the country, maybe some places in Bnei Brak. So, it's like America. You can't walk into every neighborhood. So, and why is there such in those places? And again, that's not the majority. They just get a lot of press and they make a lot of noise. In most places, I would say 70% of the Haredi neighborhoods in the country, a Haredi soldier could walk in uniform with a kippah, and he'll be honored. So it's just like everything. It's just the way the press likes to. No one's interested in giving the other stories. I can tell you stories of our soldiers who are, Mekadesh Shem Shemayim in the army, and they go to neighborhoods and people, pat them on the back. So you should just know, and the listeners should know, that most of the Haredi world does accept Haredi soldiers with open arms. Now, the places that do not there's a fear of the unknown. There's a fear that their children will see these soldiers, and their children will come to realize that, we really have to give back. How are these guys, giving their lives and being most of an effort for the country, and what are we doing? Now, and it's an answer. That's a question that needs an answer. I think there are answers. People who learn seriously, people who dedicate their lives to Torah. I think everyone agrees that that's a beautiful thing, and that's a sacrifice that's more than worthy. But it's a question that many people don't want their children to look at. They just don't want their children to know such a thing exists, because they'll see that soldier and they'll say, hey, that's a beautiful thing. Why shouldn't I be like that? And they just don't want to explain that to their children. And then they think, I think wrongly so, that they can protect them and then, create a bubble. And we all know that doesn't work. But that's the anger.
Rabbi Karmi, what percentage of the boys who go to yeshiva go through the program and come out irreligious, markedly less religious than when they went in?
Which program are you referring to?
I'm talking to your program in your yeshiva.
My program, we have approximately now 100 boys in the yeshiva, around 50 in the first 2 years, and another 50 right in the army. So I'll speak about the 50 in the army, and we already have our first group leaving the army now, coming out of the army. And looking at the 50 who came out of the army, how many of them went up, how many stayed the same, and how many went down. So I would say that at least 50% of them became stronger even through their army service, because they keep on learning, they're in the yeshiva. I would say another 45% have become pretty much the way they were, and almost nobody, maybe 5%, I wouldn't even say so, have fallen, because our whole philosophy here in the yeshiva is to prepare them for the army. We have in yeshiva here, we run our day a little differently. They learn here from 7:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. It's all kodesh in the yeshiva. All the limudei chol is in the evening hours. But even so, we have like 45 minutes a day, which is a hashkafa shir, a philosophy shir. So our boys, when they go into the army, they go in and they're well versed into what they're going to see there and what they're going to be approached with. The major issue in the army, many people think, is, if we take care of the problems, they won't be with women in the army. The Kohen is the major problem. That is not the major problem of the Chareidi. The major problem of a Chareidi going into the army is when he has that mifgash, that meeting with the Chiloni, with the non-religious, and all of a sudden they come to see that these non-religious boys are nice guys. And the guys who have some values. They're not our values necessarily. They're not as strong as ours, but they're not bad people. And then they get asked all these questions about their own emunah, about their own religion, and they've never been taught the answers. It's something I think that goes on everywhere, like on the college campuses. But if you prepare the student beforehand, as we do here in the yeshiva, and they know why they're going into the army, no one falls. And I just like to add another very, very important point is that they go into the army with a sense of mission. And their mission is to be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. And we've had it. We've had literally just incredible stories of boys who are Mekadesh Shem Shamayim in the army. And they know that's why they're going in. When a boy goes with a sense of mission, not as a lost boy, cut off from his yeshiva, cut off from his community, but quite the opposite. He goes into yeshiva bacher, and he remains a yeshiva bacher in the army. And he's prepared, and he walks in with a sense of mission. We've had no fallout. We have no one who's gone down.
That's an amazing statistic. I think that there are many yeshivas who can't say that in the yeshiva. What would you say about Nachal Chareidi? What type of fallout do they have? And I don't know if you have any knowledge about it, but since we're on the topic, I thought I'd extend it.
The Nachal, again, is a unit in the army. And, there it very much depends on the boy who goes in. If a boy goes into the army with a strong boy who simply wants to do some sort of service, even the combat service, and they walk in a strong boy with strong family, strong connection to their Yiddishkeit, those boys rarely ever fall. A lot of the stories you hear when they point to it are boys who walk into the army and they already have, 9 steps out of 9 toes out of religion. And the army just gives them that makabapatish, if you will, to give them the situation. I'll give you one quick story. You asked me the percentage. I said 5%. We had one boy who was in the yeshiva here just really for a month or two, and he went to the army afterwards, and a Rebbe saw him later in the army and asked him, his name was Yochanan. He said, Yochanan, you're not from anymore. You're not religious. And he says, Harav, he says, I haven't been religious since I was 15. So that's a boy who was in the yeshivas. He was hanging out. He already had lost it. He was just hanging on. And when he went into the army, he had his excuse to take off his kippah because no one cared at that point. But he hadn't been religious already for a long time, which is probably why he only lasted a month or two here. But Baruch Hashem, like I said, boys going to Nachal Chareidi, if it's a good boy, going as a good boy, the Nachal Chareidi is not what is going to make the boy not from. And the army is not what's going to make him not from. If he's prepared correctly, he knows what he's going into, I think he'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you, Rabbi Karmi, do you believe that going to the army is today a Mochames mitzvah?
Mochames mitzvah is a halacha hagdara, which I'd rather not get into. I don't know the sugya well enough. But if you would ask me, do I think that going into the army is a religious obligation, I would say I do not know. If you would ask me if going into the army is a moral obligation, I would say yes. In other words,
when you say you're not sure about the halacha, which part of the halacha is? What do you mean?
What's considered a Mochames mitzvah? What at one point is a Mochames mitzvah?
Well,
so
Mochames
not going
to defend Israel. To defend Israel mitzar haba aleha. So the question is, do you consider Israel today a mitzar haba aleha?
I can't imagine why not. I can't imagine why not. It seems fairly obvious that is the situation. It is a Mochames mitzvah, and these boys are going to the army, are protecting. And by the way, that's true of our boys who are doing the computers and who are doing the development of whether it's cyber defense or whether they're doing. Baruch Hashem, I have a son in one of the units. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it, and he tells me that the work he's doing is saving lives. So
I'll tell you,
it's hard to hear that would not be.
A good reason why to be Isaac in this mitzvah, Isaac in the halacha, is that the Shulchan Aruch paskins in our Chaim, that in Samach Beis, I think it is, that We paskin that by a mitzvah daraisa, mitzvah strichas kavana. So if going to the army, a boy goes because it's a moral obligation. No, he's not Makayim mitzvah. He could spend 2 years not being Makayim the mitzvah. If, on the other hand, he says it's mitzvah strichas kavana, and I know it's a mulchanas mitzvah, every day of the 2 years he's Makayim a mitzvah. Every minute he's Makayim a mitzvah.
Well, I would just disagree with you and respectfully and say that a moral obligation is also a mitzvah. So whether it's mechemes mitzvah or it's a mitzvah because you have a moral obligation that if others, you can't have others, right, then that's another type of obligation. And I think that's an important one. And in some ways, I think it may even be more important than just, the idea of that, it's a mechemes mitzvah, but realize that you're serving Klal Yisrael. And I do believe that obligation, that moral obligation to serve Klal Yisrael is one of the ultimate obligations. I don't think necessarily serving the army is the only way to discharge that obligation. But that obligation to serve Klal Yisrael is, in my mind, paramount. And, of course, a boy does that by going to the army. And I think most people, even you hear it from members of Knesset, Chaim members of Knesset, that if a boy is not learning seriously, really putting in that time, and, then he should be in the army. And very few people disagree with that. But Paul, it doesn't work out that way. But that's, in actuality. But in philosophy, I think that almost everybody would agree that if a boy is not seriously learning, and most of us know what those percentages are, then he should be serving in the army. He should be doing some type of service. There's a difficulty. How do you send a boy who is sheltered? How do you send him into the army? How do you send him into that environment? And for that is what we're providing answers. We're providing solutions to that problem. How do you take a boy and who's, like I said, sheltered in yeshiva, and how do you prepare him so that the army becomes an experience in Kiddush Hashem, not an experience in losing his Yiddishkeit? That's where we step in, and that's what we're doing.
So how do you teach your boys to respond when they bump into their first Israeli irreligious who says, you guys, you're dinosaurs. The whole world has accepted that Darwinism, survival of the fittest. It's 99.9% of scientists, the one who make your antibiotics, the one who make your iPhones, the one who are creating the guns. How do you arm a child to respond to this person?
Well, again, that's a very, very long discussion, and Baruch Hashem, we have Rebbes here who are more expert in those areas than I am. But the answer to many of those things is that the conflicts between definitive science, and the Torah's values, or even the Torah's stories, are really very, very far and few in between. And there are many, many books out there today which do argue that argument, and argue it, I think, quite convincingly. I think quite the opposite, that it's something that I do spend a lot of time with, because my own degree is in moral education and moral philosophy, is that actually philosophically and even scientifically, much of how we believe things and how we believe them to be true is scientifically valid. If you just take an example of evolution as the points of evolution that are scientific fact, if you will, if that's not a misnomer in itself, as scientists will say, we don't provide facts, we provide hypotheses. But in it, and saying that there was such an idea of some development of man, there are plenty of Rishonim who could be, who would go with that, and it would say we can accept that. Who says that the Adam Harishon was not a finished product? And there's, again, it's not something that I'm making up. It's not something Achronim are making up. It's something that's found in the words of the Rambam and other Rishonim. So there are many, many ways of taking things, and if you prepare boys with these, they're not shocked when someone.
When you say the Rambam, which Rambam are you referring to, Rabbi Karmi?
Again, I'd rather not comment. Like I said, we have people know this a lot better than I do. But there are books, and there are, whether it's the challenge of creation, whether it's different writers, and you find it who quote Rishonim. Now, you don't have to agree, and I don't agree with many of their conclusions. I think many times some of the more modern writers take things a little too far, But the sources they bring do show this type of reasoning. Ramban, I believe, the Rambam both talk about it. To get these sources for it, I'd have to get back to you. I don't, like I said before, not my field of expertise.
So I'm just curious, how would the boy respond? My name is, give me a popular Israeli name, Avi, and I'm asked by some guy, he says, you believe in this artifact called religion. Come on, all of science doesn't agree with it. We know the world is billions of years old. Avi, you're in yeshiva, boy. Stop the Gemara and let's go out to the bar tonight because it's all, you don't believe in science. What would be your response? You're Avi.
So the response is our boys are asked. We ask those boys the question. We bring it up in yeshiva. So we
Avi,
talk about it. And we do talk about how you answer.
How would you respond?
So again, the response is more or less like I told you. Yeah, like I told you before, that there's nothing in religion that says that the age of the universe is a problem. The Torah is not a history book, and the Torah talks about the history of man, meaning the history of man from which we learn lessons. We learn moral lessons. The Torah is not a history book. And we know that. And so the fact that there could have been man, or there could have been a universe, or taking Gerald Schroeder's Genesis and the Big Bang, there's nothing there whatsoever that doesn't say that the universe cannot be 350 billion years old. The Sheshish Mebreshis are, we don't know how long each day is, and how long, and Schroeder's whole concept of that each day at the universe, as the universe expanded, which is the Big Bang, which is Zman and Chagiga. There do not have to be necessary conflicts here. And it's crucially important that the boy hears that and learns about it before he's, like you said, before he has that first meeting with a Filoni boy. And rather, yes, I know that challenge. Yes, I have heard it, etc. Let me give you some possibilities that may be able to. But there are not things in science that per se do not allow us to be believers.
Now, do you think that
we can go and challenge the other boys? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Rabbi Karmi, do you believe that regular yeshivas, like the Standard, Lakewood, Mir, etc., should have a class, sort of like prepping boys for response when they meet, not only the world, but when they meet social media? Here are, some of the obvious responses. Do you think that's something that's neglected?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's a terrible disservice.
Well, Rabbi Karmi,
I'll just give you an example. I had a boy just 5 minutes ago. I was, showing me a Rashi and asking me a question in Rashi and Chumash on the Sedra, and he showed me a Rashi. I said, well, let's look at Rashi's source. He says, what do you mean Rashi's source? Isn't all Rashi Ruach HaKodesh? I said, well, you don't know that every Rashi has a source in Chazal. I mean, even the service is across the board. They're not given the truth. And it hurts. It hurts them, because this is what makes boys fall.
Well, Rabbi Gross, thank you very much. It's, when I was growing up, there was a yeshiva in America called Tarvadas that sort of did the same thing,
yes,
with the exception that they didn't have the army part, but they had the education part, etc. And it seems that
my father was from the first Talmid in the Tarvadas, and from the closest Talmidim of Rosh Hashanah Mendelovitz.
Yeah, my wife.
So I know that world well.
Yeah, my wife's grandfather was Rav Shraga Feivel, so you're.
So we're related.
Yes, it seems to me that you're a new form of yeshiva that seems to be addressing a real need. And well, thank you very much, Rabbi Gross. It's been an honor to have you on with us. Hatzlacha Rabbah, and
our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Kolta. Bye bye.